This is a tutorial and training session for functional range conditioning, PAILs and rails of knee joint internal rotation. PAILs and rails stands for progressive and regressive angular isometric loading. And in the functional range system, we use PAILs and rails to achieve three objectives. The first is to increase range of motion, length of tissue, or space within a joint. The second objective is to gain access and control of our end ranges of motion. And the last objective is to improve the health and quality of connective tissue involved in that specific joint, ligament, tendon, or muscle. So what is knee joint internal rotation? Most people understand the knee joint to simply be a bending joint with flexion and extension this way. However, the knee also has the capacity for rotation. And we have two rotations. There is internal rotation, where this shin bone called the tibia is rotating in towards the midline, and external rotation, which is where the shin and tibia rotates out away from the midline. So we have internal rotation in, external rotation out. And today we're going to be training internal rotation. There are three different setups that I'll show you to get this done. So let's move on to those next. The first setup that I'll show you is the one that I teach most commonly to my patients and clients, and the one I prefer to use when I'm training my knee joint rotation. The reason for that is it requires no specialized equipment. We're going to use our hands. So I'm seated on the ground here. I've got my knee bent in a pretty good amount of bend, but not all the way in knee flexion. And I've got my foot pointed straight out ahead of me, so my knee joint's in neutral position here. I'm going to start by bringing my foot up off the ground this way, but my heel is going to stay down on the ground. I'll begin by going into my active internal rotation of the knee. Again, this shin bone rotating this way. I'm going to take the hand and arm opposite of the leg I'm training, and I'm going to wrap it around the outside of this foot with my fingers grasping underneath the sole of my foot like this, such that I can now rotate with this hand and arm deeper into internal rotation. The hand and arm that's on the same side as the leg I'm training, I'm going to thread this back behind my calf and shin such that my fingers can now grasp upon that forearm. So I've got a lot of leverage to rotate further into internal rotation. It gives me a very firm grasp on this position to do my PAILs and rails. What I don't want to have happen here is the foot and ankle to roll into inversion. So if I only grasp on the top of my foot, I'm likely to sort of roll my ankle this way, and that's not going to be ideal. What we want to do is, again, grasp on the underside of the foot so that we can rotate just the knee joint into internal rotation. So that's the setup that I'll be using for the training session. It's the one I like best. But there's two other options that you can use. The second involves using a mobility strap, and this is a non-elastic mobility strap, meaning it doesn't stretch. But you could also do this with a belt that you might have at home. These straps I buy on Amazon from a company called Try Deer. They're about $5 to $7, and I use this for a lot of other mobility training, so it's a very inexpensive tool to have. But what I'll do with this is take one of these loops, and again, it has woven loops for handholds here. I'm going to take the end loop, place it over my foot, like this, such that now it is holding the outside of my foot with the strap, and I'm going to actively pull into internal rotation. With this setup, again, you want to avoid it rolling the ankle down that way. So I try to keep my foot pulling up back towards my shin as I go into internal rotation like that. So again, mobility strap or belt setup. The last setup is using a kettlebell or a 45-pound plate that you would put on a barbell at the gym. Now this kettlebell is lighter than what I would need for this, because what I'm going to do is go into my active internal rotation and then take the kettlebell and block that position like this. Now this kettlebell needs to be heavy enough that when I do a PAILs contraction, that it's so heavy that I can't tip it over with my foot and ankle like that. So I need this to be, in my case, probably about 50 pounds, so that as I do a PAILs contraction, I can't actively move the bell. It needs to block that position adequately so that nothing moves, makes it a pure isometric contraction. So heavy kettlebell or 45-pound plate on the floor would also work for this. So those are the three setups that we use. Let's move on to the training session next. So let's get started. When you do your PAILs contractions, your progressive angular isometric loading, you'll be taking your knee joint from internal rotation and trying to externally rotate it out of there. So you'll be contracting the muscles on the back side of the knee and these outer lateral hamstring muscles at the back of the thigh. So our PAILs going from internal rotation, trying to rotate out of that position. When you do your rails, your regressive angular isometric loads, you're going to actively try to deepen further into internal rotation, contracting again muscles on the back of the knee and this medial or middle hamstring at the back of the thigh there. So PAILs trying to rotate out away from center, rails trying to rotate further in towards internal rotation there. So let's get into our stretch. Find whatever setup you like best. I'm going to grasp on the outside edge of my foot here. Got my arm threaded behind and grabbing. And I'm going to pull as deep as I can into internal rotation. Now, when you're doing this, you're not likely to feel a lot of muscle stretching. It is a very joint-centric stretch whereby we're stretching the knee joint capsule into internal rotation. So there's not a lot of muscle sensation that you're going to feel here while you're stretching. And we always start our PAILs rails sessions with at minimum a 60-second stretch, but if you have a minute and a half to 2 minutes, by all means go longer. And while we're stretching, we're taking some deep breaths in and out. We'll go about another 20 seconds. When you do your PAILs contractions and your rails contractions, I'd like you to use anywhere from 20 to 80% intensity or effort of contraction, meaning if you're just learning how to do this, start on the lower scale of intensity or effort contracting. So let's say 20 to 30% maybe for the first few reps, start to up it to 40 to 50 once we're in the middle few reps, and maybe for the last rep, go to a higher level of intensity, all the way up to 80 if you prefer. But if you've been doing this for some time, you can go to a much higher intensity right out the gate. So let's go ahead and do our PAILs. We're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to trap some core tension in the abdomen and start to apply your PAILs. Try to actively rotate the foot and the knee out away from the midline of your body. Squeeze for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails. Actively try to deepen internal rotation, almost like I'm trying to pull my foot away from this hand here for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reestablish that core tension with a breath in. Start to apply your PAILs. Actively try to externally rotate from that internal rotation position. So I'm trying to spin my foot and ankle out that way towards the wall on my right side for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Apply your rails. Try to rotate deeper into internal rotation. Squeeze the knee tissue at the back and the medial midline hamstring for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now take a moment and just see if you can stretch it any further. The knee joint internal rotation doesn't go that far, but see, try to get every angle out of that you can. Deep breath in. Keep your core tight. Start to apply your PAILs. Try to externally rotate out of that position. Trying to spin my shin bone and knee joint out away from the midline for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Apply your rails. Try to rotate deeper to your midline, your regressive isometric for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Deep breath in. Core nice and tight. PAILs, rotate out. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Up the intensity if you can for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails, squeeze and rotate in. Really try to close that angle to the midline for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stretch as far as you can now. Deep breath in. Keep your core tight and really work your PAILs now. Try to squeeze all the tissue on the back of the leg. Try to twist that shin, knee, and ankle bone out away from center. Hold. Keep pushing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rails. Try to rotate as deep as you can inward. Squeeze all the tissue on the back side of the leg and knee. Keep pushing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Let go of your grasp. So after that, take your knee joint through some gentle external and internal rotation like this. Maybe a little bit of gentle flexion and extension also. If this is your first time training PAILs and rails for your knee joint or any joint for that matter, expect it to perhaps make you a little bit sore. That is not unusual as you're now training joints and tissues at new lengths and ranges of motion that they're not used to being trained at. Many people have never even stretched at. So if it does make you a little bit sore, don't be put off by that. It is well worth the trade-off for the benefits we get from doing PAILs and rails training and the outcomes that we get from doing it. So that's your tutorial for functional range conditioning, PAILs and rails of knee joint internal rotation.